Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Play Your Faves, the show where I take your favorite characters from video games, movies, TVs, and books, and turn them into D&D character sheets you can literally pick up and play. So, today, I actually have a character I'm really excited and kind of proud about because, except for one ability that I just can't figure out how to do in D&D yet. I think that this character fits really well as far as what I was trying to emulate. Today's character is none other than Samus from the Metroid series. So without any further ado, let's get to this. So the first thing I had to figure out was, how am I going to deal with all the different beams and missiles and all the other crazy things that you get throughout the games? And again, I generally tend to use magic to emulate abilities and things like that, because in D&D 5e, magic can do a lot of things. With this one, just because of how much she had to do, and the fact that Samus is a ranged character, I decided going wizard was the best way to go. But I do some kind of interesting things. So let's start off with stats. Originally, intelligence was at 16 at level 4. I bumped it up to 18 because intelligence is what you're going to be using for all your magic. And that's all the beams and missiles, and even her jumping ability is all magic. So it's really, really important. She is a human because that extra feat that you get is going to be really important. And Samus Aran is a human. So I made her an urban bounty hunter background simply because she's a bounty hunter, and that was the only background that had the word bounty hunter in it. And she is kind of urban-ish. I mean, she goes through ruins and stuff like that, which used to be cities. And then alignment is chaotic good, because, again, she is a generally selfless character, but she has her own set of morals and rules she follows, so she doesn't really follow the law 100% of the time. So going back to this, we had 18 intelligence. Dexterity and constitution were both things I thought would be important, because dexterity, she jumps and moves around a lot in the game, so she'll need that. Constitution, it lets her get hit. She needs the extra hit points. I put wisdom simply because as a bounty hunter, she would need to be able to read people and things like that. We only see her in the games when she's hunting Metroids or the X-Parasite. But as a bounty hunter, in between games, she probably did make money hunting down criminals and things like that. That's what bounty hunters do. Charisma, she's never been a super charismatic character. She doesn't interact with she doesn't interact with really almost anyone else other than in other M, which we don't talk about, and a couple key scenes in like Prime 3 or Fusion, when she talks to Adam and things like that. So yeah. And then strength, she has a suit for strength. She doesn't need to be super strong. She's more dexterous than she is strong. So that's that. And then I just picked skills I thought made sense for her. History, again, being a bounty hunter, being able to remember things. Insight, read people. Investigation, to find people. And stealth, to make sure you find them before they find you. All the rest of this stuff, I'll explain where the high initiative comes from in a second here, but it's actually a subclass feature, and is one of the things that really kind of fit into the idea that Samus acts first and is very good at just reacting to things. Kind of fits her character. Personality traits. Most of this I made up. The bond is actually a quote from one of the games. Protecting the protectors is my duty. And the rest of this stuff I just kind of inferred from what she did. She does come off. She doesn't really talk all that much except for other M. She is a silent protagonist, so that kind of fits. And then she does, on a regular basis, kind of defy her bounty or her orders to do what's good, whether that's picking up the last baby Metroid or crashing the research station into SR-388 to kill off the X parasites. And then this is just a joke, because it always happens. My armor seems to break all the time, and I have to find all new gear constantly. It's just how Metroid works. So let's get into the actual class features. This is just stuff to make it easier to remember things, like with her intelligence modifier and her level, she can prepare 10 spells a day. Arcane recovery, just things to remind her. Game-wise, arcane recovery is kind of like finding one of those recharge stations. And then the arcane tradition I chose was war magic, which is Xanathar's guide. Aspect of my guide's way over there. But it's got two things that really kind of fit and define the character. Arcane deflection, if I remember correctly, basically means you can burn a spell slot to reduce damage, or I think it's either reduce damage or increase your AC. Anyway, I kind of linked that to damage boosting. If you're not familiar with the term damage boost, it's a speedrunner term where you will intentionally get hit to take advantage of the invincibility frames to do something you normally couldn't do. And Metroid, I think just about all the Metroid games have a vibrant speed running community, so I had to put that in it. And then Power Surge is this really unique thing. Basically, anytime you use counter spell or dispel magic to remove a spell, you get an arcane charge. And when you hit with a spell, you can use that arcane charge to add more damage to the spell. So that really kind of functions like the charge beam. And by the way, I specifically chose the Super Metroid version of Samus for this, just to give myself a starting point. But again, with magic, you can do just about anything. So we'll talk about that when we go through the spell list, because that's what really defines the character. But yeah, that Power Surge is what we're going to use for her charge beam, because she does have to charge it up and then release it as she attacks. So kind of cool. And it adds force damage, which is the damage that the least amount of monsters are resistant to. So it's very useful. And if you think about Metroid, monsters that were resistant to normal beam damage, if you charge beam and shot them, they would take damage. So, and then the one feat I got from doing the variant human was arcane initiate, which seems weird because this is a wizard already has a lot of spells, but I needed a specific spell from the druid cantrip list, and so that's why Arcane Initiate is there. And then all this stuff doesn't really matter, to be honest, but it's put in there so you could just take this, and as long as you had enough DM experience in the Adventurers League, you could just take this sheet and use it as a 6th level character. So here we have a brief backstory for her. I didn't want to get into too much detail, just because there isn't a ton of backstory for her, and a lot of it wasn't revealed until Other M. She was just this kind of mysterious bounty hunter, and so I just put a bare bones in there. And here is the thing that really defines what she does. These are all the different spells, and we'll use them for all her different beams and bombs and everything else. So the first thing, her regular attack is the power beam. And so we just use a firebolt to simulate that, because she shoots a little ball of energy. Firebolt is kind of like that. So she fires that, real simple. Ray of Frost we use to simulate her ice beam, because ice beam can freeze people, and Ray of Frost reduces their movement. They don't have a cantrip that can freeze, because it'd be a little broken, but I'll actually go a little later into there is a freeze ability. Thunderclap basically just does damage around you, and that is a bomb. You know, that's exactly what her morph ball bombs do. So that made sense. I had to pick another cantrip, and I didn't really know, so I just chose light. And a lot of the beams, especially in the Prime franchise, you can charge the beams, and they give off a little bit of light sometimes. So that was it. And then Thorn Whip. That was why I needed the Druid cantrips. That's a Druid cantrip, and it literally is you shoot out a rope 20 feet away. It grabs onto an enemy and drags them 10 feet closer. Kind of like her grapple move in Smash. If you have a creative DM, you could probably use it in the same way that you would use the grapple beam, using your Thorn Whip to grab things and swing. That would be up to the DM, but I think it'd be a creative use of it, and there's nothing in the ability that says you can't do that. So, and then create bonfire. I had to choose a second cantrip. I just kind of treated that like this save rooms, because you can create a bonfire and camp. Then we go into the first level spells. Now, again, wizards have tons of spells where they can only prepare a certain number of them. So as much as it looks like she has crazy amounts of stuff, remember she's limited to 10 spells total a day that she can prepare. She can cast them 4 first level slots, 3 second level, 3 third level. And then Arcane Recovery, she can recover, I think, like half of that. So, first things first, Speed Booster was introduced in Super Metroid. Expeditious Retreat increases your speed. Kind of makes perfect sense. Magic Missile at its base form fires 3 missiles. The Spazer Beam fires 3 beams. Again, makes sense, right? Jump increases your jump distance, like the high jump boots. A lot of these just was really easy, fun. Detect Magic, I've always treated it in game as kind of an X-ray scope, because for 30 feet you can see any magic for about 10 minutes. So it fits really well with that. Absorb Elements is a reaction ability where if you get hit by elemental damage, you can absorb it and take half damage from it. Kind of like what the Varius suit does, where you don't get hurt by hot rooms anymore, and you take half damage compared to what you did before. Chromatic Orb is what I kind of chose to represent missiles. It does more damage than the Power Beam, and you have a limited amount of them. So it kind of made sense. Mage Armor was basically a way to deal with the fact that if we go all the way back up here, AC at 12 means she's getting hit by everything. Mage Armor will shoot that up to 15. And it's kind of like her putting on her power suit. Identify kind of works like the Scan Visor, which didn't appear in Super Metroid. But again, I had extra spells that I needed to choose, and it just made sense. But Scan Visor in the Prime games would give you all this information. That's what Identify does. And then Cure Wounds was the spell I got from Druid, and I just treat that as the reserve tanks, which were annoying in Super Metroid, but what the heck. Now we get to the second level spells. Hold Person is basically the freeze from Ice Beam. It works very similarly, where they can't move. Their muscles actually contract, so they're frozen in place. They're just not, frozen with ice. But I thought it worked pretty well. Knock was another one where I had an extra spell I needed, and this actually makes sense. In Super Metroid, there's different colored doors, and you have to use like missiles on red ones, or super missiles on green ones, or power bombs on orange ones. I just figured Knock would kind of work the same way, where you come to a door you can't normally open, you can use Knock to unlock it. So I thought that was kind of cool. Melf's Acid Arrow is super missile. Again, it does more damage than regular missiles, Chromatic Orb. It does a little extra damage from the acid, so the explosion. And they're green, and super missiles are green. So it's kind of like, yeah, totally. And then Levitate, I kind of treated like Space Jump. Levitate basically makes you float. I think it's like 5 or 10 feet off the ground. So it doesn't get you very high, but you can move another 5 or 10 feet as long as this spell is active and you're concentrating on it. So that does kind of work like Space Jump, where it's not flight or anything like that. It's just little incremental jumps. So I thought that worked well. And then we get to the third level. Counterspell and Dispel Magic are the charge beam that we talked about before, where every time she uses those, she gets a charge that she can use. Glyph of Warding is an interesting spell where you put a glyph down, and one of the things you can do is set it off to explode when it's triggered, and it does a lot of damage in a pretty large area. So it fit really well with the Power Bomb, because Power Bomb will wipe out a room of enemies, and Glyph of Warding could do that as well. It could also wipe out a group of friends, so you got to be careful about how you use it. And then Lightning Bolt is what I chose to represent the Plasma Beam. Plasma Beam is generally the most powerful beam you get, and the thing it does is it can go through enemies, which is a big deal. Lightning Bolt shoots a bolt in a straight line that goes through enemies, so I figured that would work pretty well for that. Now, the two things I couldn't get were I couldn't figure out anything for the Wave Beam. The Wave Beam is unique because it lets you shoot through walls. I don't know a spell that lets you shoot through solid objects in D&D. I thought about maybe something involving phasing, but I just wasn't able, especially at level 6, I just wasn't able to come up with anything. At a later level, if I looked really hard, I might be able to find something. But if you have an idea for the wave beam, put it in the comments below. And then the other one, I couldn't really do a screw attack yet, because the spell I would use to simulate it is a 4th level spell. It's Fire Shield, where any time somebody starts their turn near you, they take damage, and every time they hit you with a melee attack, they take damage, which is kind of how the screw attack works. You spin and you just run into enemies and do damage to them. So that was kind of how I do screw attack. Again, you just have to gain, I believe it's like 1 more level to get your level 4 spell. So level 7 you can take Fire Shield and do that. But the limitations of this show is if it's a single class, it's only level 6. So that's what it is. So that's really Samus Aran. Like I said, you quite literally can play this character almost exactly like Samus Aran. If you add in a couple magic items, like maybe boots of spider climbing for wall jumps, or other things like that, like you literally can just flavor text this into a really cool, fun character that plays very much like Samus Aran's. So, yeah, that is that's going to be all for me today. I do want to mention I will upload this to my Patreon page. You don't have to be a patron to be able to download it. It's just an easy place for me to put the files and have them all in one place. However, this one's a little different. I had an issue with Acrobat, so I had to just export it as a complete PDF. So this is one of the only character sheets you can't actually edit at all. It's just a picture. But that's the only limitation of it is you can't edit it. Everything else is exactly the same. So like I said, I will have a link to my Patreon page where you can download this character sheet to have it. Like I said in my previous video, I have some issues with the new Adventure League rules. However, they do kind of require you to build a new character. So now all of these player faves, you can play them. Just start them at level 1. You know where to go for level 6, and you can kind of just make your way there without too much difficulty. Other than that, in the comments below, how would you have made Samus Aran? You know, would you have chosen a sorcerer instead of a wizard? Would you have chosen a ranger or a fighter instead of this, and used weapons instead of magic to simulate her beams? You know, what is it? The other thing I'd like to know in the comments below, what character do you want to see me turn into a D&D character sheet next? Anyway, that's all for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye!